I'm messing with you, Jake. You know I like you. I
Alrighty.
did not call you Bayou Jack at long last. I got it right. Only took what, a year?
Yet.
Hey, BioJack is a fucking awesome game.
It's not a game. It's a character from the Swamp Thing cartoon that only got like 6 episodes.
Well, those are usually the best characters. Yeah.
He's just some guy. He just fucking shows up. Something's like, it's my friend Bayou Jack. And he's like,
Oh, wow.
"Hey, I'm Bayou Jack." They say his name like 4 times when they introduce him. It's like, what the fuck? This is so stupid. Yet it's kind of doing something to me. It's in my head.
All
Well,
right.
in any case, welcome
All right.
welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting Inside Movies Galore episode, where we are starting our Halloween month with a movie that our host will tell you all about. Bayou Jack, or whatever your name is.
Got him.
Why don't you tell me, Jacob, what this movie is all about?
Okay, so we are starting off with a very peculiar film. It is the 1977 Japanese horror comedy fantasy fairy tale psychedelic head trip Houseu, directed by Nobuhiko Ôbayashi. Actually, I guess technically you could just call it House because he intentionally chose an English title for it. But so basically, per but before we really launch into that, I guess we want to do everyone's intro and for well
First,
per IMDb, we got the base description. A
okay.
schoolgirl and 6 of her classmates travel to her aunt's country home, which turns out to be haunted. Of course, it gets a little more complicated than that. I really like how Criterion puts they describe how do you describe it? As a psychedelic ghost tale? A stream of consciousness bedtime story? An episode of Scooby Doo is directed by Mario Bava? Uh, I think all of those kind of apply. So I guess we'll just give everyone's first impressions, and why don't we start with you, Dave? What do you think?
Well, I've had this film in my collection for I don't know how long. I think I picked it up from Half Price Books for like $15 or so, which is what they normally put on Criterion stuff or Kino stuff or anything like that. And it just sat in my collection forever until I just one of us, which one of you crazies decided to pick this film? You, okay, I'll blame you. Anyways, um, but yeah, so I don't know what I watched entirely. I'll have to do a rewatch, but I liked bits and pieces of it, to be honest, even though it was like strange and weird and like totally off the wall. Um, but I mean, you get, I got a kind of, I like the colors. I guess, um, it was colorful. And there were some weird moments with a demon head in a well.
Some weird moments.
And talk about that aunt. Oh my God, she was kind of weird. Um,
Kinda.
yeah. So I'm kind of in the middle of whether I like it or just think what the hell was Criterion thinking. Um,
It seems like
but here's the thing. I like wacky. I like funky because as I was telling the boys before this, my favorite
Jimmy and the boys.
my favorite Japanese film is actually called Fantasy Mission Force, and it's just as wacky and weird. But I think this one's more weirder. I think this one's like goes beyond what that film.
Are you talking about that Jackie Chan film you had me and Brandon watch?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. That was weird.
Yeah, it was
Anyway,
out there, but this one was. I think this one topped that one.
right. I don't think that was a Japanese film. But anyway, Dustin, you said some comments. Why don't we let you jump in?
Do what? Oh, well, I was just saying, like those of us who saw this movie for the first time, like within the last several hours, like I'm still kind of in a daze. It's sort of like, what happened to me? Where did I go? Like, did someone? I mean, I had a pretty crap day, and I don't know exactly when, but I could believe somebody slipped me some drugs or something when I wasn't looking, and I just didn't feel it till I got home, like incredibly late.
I'm sorry.
So
I
this movie,
slipped a roofie in your Kool-Aid.
oh, you bastard! I'll cut you. Oh, where's my? Yeah. Anyway, but so I mean, I've heard a lot about this movie, and when I first started it, I was joking. It's like, so this is basically just a full-length Tool video, right? Because I heard it was like really trippy and bizarre. And due to technical issues, which were not my fault, I had to watch the first 10 or so minutes of it without subtitles. And I was trying to figure out, it's like, what the hell is going on? Because it's like schoolgirls like giggling and laughing with each other, and they appear to kiss at one point, and it's like, oh, this is one of those Japanese movies.
You kind of flirted with that without going full bore into it.
There was some unique camera work in it.
Well, I mean, that's not what I meant. But anyway, so once the subtitles started working, it was like, oh, okay. So it's just introducing our main character and like all her friends who had stereotype names to kind of keep it simple, I guess. And I had always heard people talk about this movie as just like the weirdest thing out there. Like it comes up in conversations about stuff like Eraserhead. And I get it now because it's like, okay, this has like the veneer of a plot, like it felt like I had kind of seen this story before. Like it feels like it had a lot of influence on things that came afterward because this is fairly old, like 77. So like the ghost story where, they go to the house and they get like assimilated by the other ghosts.
What?
I don't know. It's such a strange thing to process. It had a lot of seemingly experimental technology in it.
Same.
And I really appreciated that. So I mean, it's gonna be a tough one to really pin down. Like, I enjoyed the story that we were able to kind of glean from just all the mayhem that was going on. It's like, okay. But, we'll get into the plot pretty soon. But I ended up enjoying it, even though I was confused a fair amount of the time, and still somewhat am. I do kind of want to go pick up the Criterion Blu-ray of this now, though, and find out. Okay, what was supposed to be going on in some of these scenes? Like someone gets eaten by a piano? Like, did I really see that?
Right. Well, and I definitely there's some background to comment on that as we get to it. But Tim, what are your thoughts?
Tim, are you there?
The movie was really weird.
Think so, eh?
And tell us exactly the way you saw the film. What was it without?
It was just like it looked like one of those like weird snuff films, kind of. But it wasn't a snuff film.
Oh
like
man, that's
guinea
just
like
And
those
you-
guinea pig movies?
And you saw it without
Experimental?
subtitles, correct?
Yeah.
Oh man, that must have been something else.
oh man. Oh, it's
I didn't know
background.
there
There's
I
some
didn't know
background
there was
that makes the idea of it being a snuff film hilarious to me.
piano part was
But
pretty cool though.
yeah,
Oh man, if you had like, I don't know, if you had trying to think of a safe way to put this, if you had like some Everclear, let's just say, man, this must have been exciting as hell without subtitles. Just let it happen.
I have yet
I think
to
the
watch
point
this
gets
movie.
across pretty well.
Yeah. All right. So, Brandon, I know your voice is a little weak, but you can give us your initial impression and so forth.
Well, I was first introduced because I like to troll around the Criterion sales, and I saw this, and I usually look for something interesting and artistic whenever I go for Criterion. That's my secondary, whereas my first is usually Academy Award winners. And then I ended up seeing this, and it was just like, oh, cool, a haunted house movie. I like haunted house movies. So I got that and I brought it home. I don't remember. I think the first time I watched it, we both watched it together.
I think you're right.
Because-
I think it was when we were showing each other stuff out of our collection.
Yeah, because it was more of that, oh, this is something I can actually knock out. I've been
Right.
meaning to watch this. And then I was just like blown away by the oddity of the whole. It was just so strange and surreal. And this time around, I feel like I got more out of it this time around than I got out of the first one. Because the first time, I think this is strange. But I feel like I understand it a tad more this time around. Except for the banana thing. I don't get the banana thing.
Yeah, that was, I kind of blocked that out.
It's bananas. Banana.
This is bananas! And then literally bananas. What?
Yes. So,
That line from Rap God. If he says bananas, as you say, I'm not taking any chances.
I think Brandon's right. I think he showed this to me and this is probably my second viewing. I've had a copy. I think you actually got me the copy. I've had it sitting on the shelf for a long time now, and I just never got around to rewatching it. And I have to admit, yes, it's weird is the key word. It is a strange, weird, and we're going to more detail on that in a bit, but I will throw in here something that actually kind of sums it up. One of the critics was very negative about the film merits themselves, saying there's surprisingly little to recommend House as a film. But then his follow-up, I love this, but as an experience, well, that's a whole other story. It definitely is a film that, like, it's an experience to watch it, whatever you think of it as a film. You probably see nothing like it.
I have not. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, let's shoot a normal movie, but do drugs for some parts.
I do
We
find
Wizard
got
of Oz on
interesting
drugs.
This would have fit better in the Supernatural month than in the October month, but whatever.
I thought it was the Supernatural month, but I didn't realize it was our pick one for October.
Well, we're
I think we actually,
right on the border.
I think we accidentally kinked our calendar Like, I think we might have. I think when we planned this, we thought September 30th was a Tuesday.
Whatever, it does
Well,
work.
this is the first of the Halloween ones, but I thought it was good to start it closest to the Supernatural month as a transition. Also,
I agree.
believe it or not, voting-wise, it got twice the number of votes of the second highest, which was Dawn of the Dead. So apparently, we're not the only ones that are fans of this particular film, which oddly enough in Japan it was a hit.
Yes.
Just
not with critics or with the cast.
Before we go on with the rest of the plot line, what did everyone think about that label, that intro thing of the house thing? I thought that was kind of weird.
The bizarre animated title, like that was cool. It kind of reminded me of the old Suspiria title, with how like that weird breathing thing.
Yeah.
I actually like the imagery.
And actually, I know, speaking of, you can't really separate this one from that falls into the category, I think, of the promotional artwork. There was some very unique artwork with this one. And I know the cover of the Criterion case is one of the reasons why it catches the eye. That demon cat picture just But yeah, that opening credit moment was pretty fun. That was and that was the part where they had like the really deep voicing house, right? The which bit of trivia there, that announcer is the one who wrote the basic theme for the film, and he shows up as the watermelon vendor in a small role. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, as far as the plot, it's fairly light on plot. The plot is not entirely deep or complex, but the basic gist of it is you have this girl who goes by the name of Gorgeous, who is played by Kimiko Ikigami, and her friends who all have these strange nicknames that are basically that's their main personality trait. You know, Gorgeous is the pretty one. You got Kung Fu, who's the sporty one. You got Fantasy, who likes taking pictures, and everyone's always talking about how she always fantasizes things. You got the Prof, who's the smart one. You got Melody, the musical one. Sweet, who's the real kind one that always wants to help and clean and do all the waifu stuff. And then Mac, which I guess is supposed to be short for stomach, apparently. She's the stomach, the one that's always eating. And so you start with Fantasy and Gorgeous talking about how Gorgeous is going to go spend the break with her father and she's going to have a great time. And the other girls are going to go off on a trip without her and they miss her and all that stuff. And then the father introduces his new fiance, who's going to be Gorgeous's new mother. And she is not having that. She is furious. She gets in touch with her aunt and says, "Can my friends and I come spend the break with you?" And her aunt, who she hasn't seen in 10 years, is like, "Oh, yes, come on, have a good time, you know." And so they go to his house out in the... What's that?
And isn't this after they go and try to get together with their teacher, Mr. Togo, and
Yes.
They supposedly every summer or whatnot go to like this tavern or bar or whatever, and or inn. It was an inn, and apparently it was run by his sister, and his sister like was pregnant or some shit.
Right. She was about to have a baby, so the inn was closed. And it
was like a class trip they go on every summer, but they canceled it this year.
It's like when the Harry Potter kids went to that inn all the time, and whatever beer.
So this guy, yeah. So the teacher's name is Togo Sensei. He's played by actually Kiyohiko Ozaki, was apparently a big country and western star in Japan at the time. So I thought that was kind of amusing that they picked him to play this teacher that fantasy is in love with and absolutely adores. And
A
so
manly man.
yes. And the manly man is late for the gathering because he trips and falls and gets his butt stuck in a bucket and has to go to the hospital. and, and
I
so
wondered what the hell that was about.
Just
these-
delay, so that the girls can have some fun. It's a slumber
Yes.
party in a haunted house. So
Lots of fun.
They don't know that it's haunted.
Exactly. But so they
Well,
get
I
there.
mean, yeah, I mean, otherwise, why would you go?
I don't know. In some of these horror movies, this
to get
asylum looks like it's haunted.
ahead of the
50
game.
teenagers got killed. Let's go.
We'll have a party in the mine.
Get out to this the middle of nowhere, and they meet their watermelon vendor, who tells them that, oh yeah, she used to give piano lessons to all the girls in town, but they're not really, there aren't any anymore, and she lives alone, and they go on up to, they meet the aunt, and from the beginning you can tell she's kind of creepy. And
Just a little bit.
Well, she's not
Just-
exactly Lady Snowblood.
right, she's there's something a little off, just a bit. And then before long, Matt goes missing, and then before long, someone else goes missing, and it just kind of goes from there. And we didn't do the usual spoiler thing, but you all know the drill by now. Spoilers.
You know who we are.
We're gonna
And-
spoil the shit out of you.
Right. So basically, in the end, the main thing is you find that the house is essentially an extension of the aunt who has already died, and she had a fiance back in the war who never came home, but she swore to always wait for him, and he
Which
never
is kind
came
of
home.
romantic.
And she
Which is
died
kind
a
of romantic.
spinster. And so now, from the beyond the grave, she feasts on virginal girls who come into the house. That's kind of the gist of it, really. Unless you all had any other plot elements you want to inject there.
Not the before the girls even get there, there's an animated sequence of them either on the bus or in a subway. For some reason, I felt like they lost a lot of budget along the way just to have that animated sequence or something. But for some reason, it looks unique.
I don't think that was a budget thing. I think they intentionally did stuff like that throughout the film. And again, I can get to more on that later because there's a lot of weird intrigue with the production to this one. But
Oh yes.
and actually, one of the aspects of the behind the scenes is that Yoko Minamida is the one who played the aunt.
Okay.
She was the only established actor in the cast. Like I said, the one that played Gorgeous was starting out as an actress. All the other girls are models who worked with Obayashi on previous jobs. Like I said, the one dude was a country singer who happened to be friends with the director. The watermelon farmer was the guy who did the score. Pretty much everyone involved with the film was someone who was a friend or acquaintance of the director. So it is mostly a non-professional group of people that are acting in this film.
So would you say that this was an independent group of people involved with this film?
Well, in some ways, like say in some ways. So that's the There is a cameo from the guy that plays her fiance. Tomokazu Miura was apparently a teen idol at that time, so he was a kind of a big name. But that was a cameo, very small. And actually, yeah, we'll go ahead. No, we'll save that for the technical part. But like I said, if there's no major plot additions. Oh, one little plot addition that I should have mentioned is the girls ultimately are led to the house by the appearance of a fluffy white cat that they call Blanche. I think they actually called her Shirley in the original language, which just basically means white. And Blanche, of course, means white too. That was how it was subtitled on my version. So basically, white cat. um, and this white fluffy cat is a major character in its own right. It's actually probably one of the more notable cats I've ever seen in a movie. But and I mentioned the picture that's on the cover, but there's a lot of pictures of the cat hanging around the house. I think the girls actually comment on that at one point. And as things go on, those pictures become more and more sinister. So that was kind of a fun little touch, I thought. But so what do y'all think of the individual characters? Were any of them really kind of jump out at y'all? We already mentioned most of them, but
Well, all of them really jumped out. I mean, it was kind of the ones that didn't have like an obvious gag. Like Mac was like always carrying food, and Prof was the only one with glasses. Like some of them like stood out more than others, so it was kind of hard to tell some of them apart in some scenes because they weren't like doing their thing. So I would say they stood out more. Those specific ones stood out more just because they had something. They had the thing they were associated with like on them at all times.
Right. Yeah, I feel like Prof was often carrying like books and stuff too, and things like Melody did have a guitar that she carried with her, and of course she played the piano a lot.
Oh, she played it a lot, all right.
Her.
And how
the piano also seemed to be played on its own.
Yeah, occasionally. And the cat played it a couple times too.
Weren't there some fingers that eventually played them too? There was a moment where I saw just fingers were playing it.
Well,
Indeed.
I mean, they set up the kills in conjunction with the personalities of the characters. I mean, where you had Gorgeous in front of the mirror, Melody with the piano, Mac with the well with the watermelon. All of these just killed, of course, with background there. A lot of those were had been come up with by, I believe, the director's daughter or writer's daughter,
Yes.
who had talked about stuff that had scared her or would scare her. Like, wouldn't it be scary if a woman in a mirror killed me or killed somebody?
And that was one of the elements I was going to go into at a later point. But I guess you could mention it if you want to go ahead and go into the kills now, because the director's daughter, Chigumi Ôbayashi, was 10 at the time that he was working on the screenplay, and he went to her and asked her for advice on what would scare people, because the way he put it was adults see the world as it is. They don't have the ability to be fantastical in their thoughts. You know what I mean? Like he's like a kid sees world in a very fantastical way, in a very, so he wanted her input on how to make a fantastical film. And she's actually credited with writing the story, even though the screenplay was Shiho Katsura with a little bit of help from the director. his daughter actually got a scenario credit at age 10, which is kind of cool. Uh, but yeah, the girls. I actually really liked the part with Gorgeous. The part with that was I think one of the cooler ones where she's sitting in front of the mirror and she starts seeing all these weird, creepy images. And then she sees her own image break apart and fall apart, and it's just like flames underneath, and then she like burns up, there. I just thought that was a really cool, creative way of doing it.
Oh yeah.
And then Mac, of course, disappears, and someone goes looking for her and pulls her head out of the well where the watermelon was supposed to be. And then Mac's disembodied head bites the other girl in the ass.
That appears in a lot of memes. Like, yes, this is a real movie. It's like,
Yes. I didn't look, but I'm sure there are a lot of memes. And then, of course, everyone knows about we keep alluding to the piano and melody, and very well-known sequence there. Very
it was a surprise
unusual.
to me.
Yeah. So she, at one point early in the film, she's playing the piano, and she like kind of jumps, and she's like, "It bit me," or something like those lines, and like she had hurt her finger, but then later she goes back and is playing it, and it does a little more than that. And yeah, and then you eventually get that scene of the disembodied fingers playing, which is very interesting.
Tim, what is your take on some of the characters in here?
Devil, where you at?
I think he's disconnected at the moment.
He's gone.
Looks that way.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh,
looks
okay.
like he's gone.
Okay. I guess I didn't realize that. But anyways,
Well, it was like, man, he's been quiet for a while. Come back, Tim. We need you.
But anyway, yeah, I guess. Did anyone want to like take the lead on any of the other descriptions there? I feel like I'm hitting all of them.
Well,
I mean, the only one.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the only one that and I guess really even, I was going to say the only one that I think that had died, not linked to the character, was the prof, or professor, I guess, short for. But even then, it was really the loss of her glasses that had her die. She ended up searching for that while she was trying to find a way to stop it. So I guess really that's the reason why I think that when you talk about characters, their deaths are also important to talk about, because it's so closely linked to their characters.
Mm-hmm. And one of the close ones definitely was Sweet, because again, like she really liked cleaning and all this kind of girly stuff, and she ends up being attacked by futons and other supplies, and ends up getting turned into a doll, basically, which was kind of an interesting way of doing that. But that was one that very specifically came from the daughter's advice. She talked in the interview I saw, she talked about how when she was a kid, she was afraid to get the futons out of the closet because she thought they would end up falling on her and smothering her. And I'm like, yeah, well, it can be pretty heavy. Yeah. But and then I always forget with some of the later ones exactly what happened. Kung Fu got sucked into a lamp somehow.
Yeah, that was kind of a weird sequence.
Yeah.
She's trying to destroy the portrait of the cat, which seemed to be like the channel for the house's power. And she's sucked into a lamp, but as the lamp dissects her, her legs are able to fly out and hit the painting anyway and damage the house. Yeah, You have to
It's
see it to believe it.
right. And then
I think Kung Fu was the other character to me that stood out to me, because at least through my experience of the film, because she was like a Power Ranger, you know. It was like
Okay, yeah.
Well,
I,
she was the solution to most of the problems. That was for sure.
I'll just kick this door down. Hi-ya! It's like, I mean,
well,
sure.
also she went around a little longer. She actually had, I thought she had a little bit more character development than most of the characters did. Maybe partly because she was around longer, but yeah. And she was cute.
Oh, they were all
But,
cute.
well, yeah, this is true. So and I can never fully lock into my brain what happened with fantasy. I don't know why. It kind of,
Oh, that Fantasy was the last one left after she had
yeah,
just seen Prof get like sucked down to hell
right.
or whatever happened. It was kind
Probably
of hard to
someone
tell.
dissolved in water,
And
right?
Fantasies was she imagines that everything's okay, and she like cuddles up to her friend,
Yeah.
who is really the ghost lady of the house, but it doesn't look like that to her because she's fantasizing. So
Hmm.
she thinks it's okay and goes over. And then we don't see what actually happens to her. Like it just kind of ends
Right.
ambiguously.
And one fun thing, like, is it doesn't stop there. Of course, you have the woman who is supposed to become Gorgeous's new mother, decides to go after her to talk to her, ends up showing up at the end, and she thinks she's meeting with Gorgeous, but you kind of get the feeling that the aunt got kind of younger and more energetic with each victim, and you kind of
Yeah.
get the impression that she basically became Gorgeous, and then at the end she's meeting with this woman, and and I think like one of the very last lines or something like that was she basically like they're all sleeping now, but they'll get up when they're hungry. They always get up when they're hungry or something like that. And that was a pretty fun way to end it.
I like the way the ant acted, because there was a moment where she looked at the screen like almost mischievously, like she was looking at us.
Right.
You know, like she was smiling just inwardly.
Right.
You know, I mean, to me, it was like all fun and games with the ant.
What
I
I don't,
mean,
Especially,
like I say, the only death I don't quite get is the guy who they all are fawning over. I mean, he finally gets to the watermelon vendor, says he doesn't like watermelon, he likes bananas. And then the next time you see him it's just his hat with a bunch of bananas underneath.
well, before
And
that, he saw the watermelon vendor turn into a skeleton, and then he like freaks
yeah,
out, and yeah.
still doesn't lead to how he became a bunch of bananas, but
Yes. It's,
I mean, with this movie, you kind of just have to go with it.
yeah, you kind of
Like, it
roll
doesn't
with
give
it,
you a choice.
right?
Evidently, the movie wants you to go bananas. So,
Yes. All bananas. But so this probably would be a good time then to kind of go into some of the production and technical aspects. Like that part with the watermelon vendor is a good segue because it's a cartoon skeleton, like very, very fake looking. And that's a common thing throughout the film. This was a film that, the weirdness of everything that we described so far was just dialed up to the nth degree because of the liberal use of animation, of weird camera tricks, of speeding up and slowing down images, of just weird aperture, like pinpoint focus, and
Well,
weird.
one thing I noticed about some of the production is that in the very beginning, when we see that argument going on between Gorgeous
Right.
father and the new mother, you can see that the deck that they are supposedly out on, the
Mhm.
promenade or whatever, you can see that that is actually a set. And
Right.
then, of course, later on, for some reason, I kept thinking because of the coloring of the sunset, I kept thinking Gone with the Wind.
That may have been intentional. I don't know, but
you,
they did
you know what I mean?
yeah, but they did frequently make use of painted backdrops in this one. There were definitely points in time where it was obvious that they were in front of a background. And again, the director is on record saying that he wanted the special effects to look as artificial as he could because he did not want realism. He wanted to create a fantastical world, a feeling that you are watching a fantasy.
He wanted
So,
surrealist mayhem, you're saying.
exactly, yes. So this, because if you look at the context, both Japanese and American cinema in the late 70s were all about realism. Like they were like that's nitty gritty, Martin Scorsese kind of stuff, and there were exceptions. This was the same year that Star Wars came out, but even that
I was
was
thinking that. I was thinking that. I was like, wasn't this the same year as Star Wars? I was like,
Well, didn't Wizards come out too?
yeah.
made, but
Ralph.
the film also was conceived 2 years before it actually started being filmed. So it was a very long road to get it made. And you could definitely say the early 70s were very much in that vein in a lot of
Oh,
ways. Um,
they also used some primitive green screen type effects as well,
Oh,
or a
right.
we
blue screen
noticed.
in that case, like in the scene where they dissolve, where the prof gets dissolved by the water at the end.
Hmm.
Uh, they used that as a way of making her look like she was dissolved by painting her blue, which would have been interesting to look at. But for what they've got, it was interesting how they went about it.
Right. Yeah. And then the another thing that's kind of important to notice is Obayashi. He was mostly a commercial director. He actually started out doing experimental short films, and I did watch that one that comes with it, Emotion. Oh man, that's an experimental film. But he did a lot of commercials, and he was well known as a commercial director, which in a way gave him a sense of flair for style. But because he was known as a commercial director, no one would take him seriously as an actual theatrical. This was his film debut as a feature film. And like I said, it was kind of a long. Actually, the history of this is fascinating. Toho, which is a major studio, uh, saw the success of Jaws and said, "We want one." So basically, they went to this guy and said, "Can you come up with a horror film that can capitalize on the that could be our answer to Jaws?" Basically, and that's when he went to his daughter and they came up with this crazy film, and Toho loved it. They greenlit it in moments. According to him, it was like just a matter of a couple hours. But then they couldn't make it because not a single director who worked for them was willing to touch the film. No one wanted to do it except Obayashi, but they're like, well, you don't work for us. You can't film our movie, even though he wrote it. So he spent like 2 years. He did all this weird cross promotion stuff. He got the band that shows up in the film. I can't remember their name, Godayo or something like that. The guy that scored the film, the Issei Kobayashi, he got them. They put out a soundtrack a year before the film actually came out. They did a radio drama, which apparently was a huge success. They did a manga. They did all kinds of stuff. And finally, Toho was like, okay, you win. You're making your film. And it was a huge success. The critics hated it, but it made a lot of money. And Toho was actually upset because they didn't like the finished product. They didn't want it to be a success. So it's kind of funny that it did that. But if you look at that weird background, that explains a lot about the director filmed on Toho's set with a Toho budget, but mostly their crew, but the cast and a lot of the crew were his people, and they basically it was a little scandalous actually, and they had they were like, well, we'll do what we want, sort of thing, and it was like they had one thing I think about the film, I feel like you watch it and you're like, they had fun making this movie.
They did. And I'm looking at the different titles that came out the same year of this film. Roots came out the same. Believe it or not, Roots, the miniseries, came out. The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
The Kentucky Fried Movie.
Oh shit!
Of the Spiders, Empire of the Ants. The Island of Dr. Moreau, The Hills Have Eyes, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo. These are some of the films that came out at the exact same time. This is weird.
Right. There were some weird ones. And wasn't there one just recent? I feel like there was one I saw recently. I can't
The
remember.
Car came out. And yes, you were right, Dustin, Wizards came out. So.
Man, if you were like a hippie who liked to do drugs and go to movies, you had one hell of a year.
Right. Yeah.
Saturday Night Fever.
Oh yeah, that was that year, wasn't it? Yeah.
It is interesting, though, when you think about it, how this is a film that the critics said was crap, and that the people that worked on it even thought it was crap. Even writing in there like, oh, you had fun with this, but it's a crap film. Better luck next time. And yet it was a success when it actually went out into theaters there.
Raggedy Ann and Andy, A Musical Adventure, came out that year.
Oh God.
Let's see. And
I remember seeing that.
David Cronenberg's Rabid.
And that was the year where the Best Picture nominees were The Goodbye Girl, Julia, The Turning Point, Star Wars Episode 4, New Hope.
Pete's Dragon.
Yeah.
Pete's Dragon. God. Orca.
Oh, God came out that year.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was. That was a trip.
I think we're getting a little far afield there, but
should we be moving on to like the music? I guess.
Yep, we should.
The music. Yeah. What do y'all think of the music?
It's wild.
Yep.
It had that mix.
So
it was interesting.
Yeah,
so happy
and actually,
and cheery.
that was another thing, like what Brandon was just talking about. the guy who wrote the score, he was a guy who had worked with Ôbayashi on a lot of his commercials. And Ôbayashi said, if I ever make a movie, you can write the music. And he held him to that. But then he ended up giving him the script to House, and he looked at it. He's like, I don't want to write this. But then he ended up talking him into writing the theme. And then they brought in that band. I can't remember the name of the band that actually wrote most of the. They did most of the
Started with a
actual.
G. I remember that.
Right.
Started with a G.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to look it up right now. But the yeah, that was the thing, is he finally got convinced to at least come up with the main theme. And I think it's a great theme. Like that basic theme, and it's like kind of wistful and charming and creepy depending on how it's played, you know?
Yeah.
But Go Diego is the name of the band. That's what, and they actually have a cameo when the girls are waiting to get on the train. Those are the guys that they're flirting with, basically. But that was, and of course, you know, the theme becomes very important during the piano scene, but also at various other points throughout the film. Yeah, and I think there were a couple of songs that were actually by the band too. They actually, which, if I remember correctly, were mostly English language, which was kind of interesting.
It kind of had a harder rock, for that time, harder rock feel to it,
Right.
other than the main theme, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there were parts of the score that were rocked up a little bit, because, like I said, they did kind of play around with that a little.
It's weirdly upbeat. Like, you'd think it would have like some more ominous music, but it was really like cheerful.
It was.
That was one of the things that added to the oddity of the overall film. Was not just that, but they used a lot of like, what am I trying to say? Like a diffuse lighting at times. You know what I mean? Kind of like a soft lighting a lot of the time.
Here's an
And
interest.
it almost, you know, the way they held the camera, the way they did it came across as intentionally, but it definitely came across as extremely campy at times too, of like very kind of almost Hallmark Channel-ish, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, like sappy.
yeah. And I could have been, this could be my perception, but tell me what y'all think. I feel like the girl who was supposed to become Gorgeous's mother, am I correct that every scene she's in, the wind is blowing and her hair and her scarf is blowing? I got that impression. I felt. Did y'all see that?
I think so.
Yeah. Which was an interesting touch, you know.
Well, over the top is something that this movie does very well, I would like to think.
This goes to 11. But yeah, so I'm trying to think of the other.
Here's something. Apparently, the film was originally released as a double billed feature with the romance film Pure Hearts in the Mud.
Yep.
And they did not expect House to be as successful. Toho didn't. So
nobody did, except
the other one.
Well, actually, nobody did.
I mentioned the guy who had the cameo.
Speaking of Toho, this gave me a lot of kind of flashbacks to Godzilla versus Hedorah. You know what I mean?
Right.
You guys have seen that too, right? The smog monster, where it has like all these like weird trippy effects, almost like a test run for this.
I'm not sure I saw that exact one, but I'm sure I can visualize some of it.
So
Godzilla,
apparently, go ahead.
no.
Go ahead.
Godzilla fights a monster made of toxic sludge, and we see it like melt people with very similar looking visual effects to what I saw here in House. Like that's what it vividly reminded me of.
What's interesting is that supposedly there was a radio drama based on House before Obayashi received the special permission to direct the film, which is
Right.
interesting.
Well, like I said, that was one of the ways he got permission was they couldn't ignore it any longer. They're like, people like this. It was kind of, but like I said, that one that it was a double bill with, the guy that had the cameo as the fiance, he and I can't remember the name of the girl. There was like a pair that were like teen idols, and they starred in that film, and they were like the hot ticket at that time. And that was like Toho was like, okay, that's the safe bet. And then we've got this weird one that we don't really know.
Here's a one other thing. Actress Kamiko Ikegami was uncomfortable about a nude scene in the film. To make her more comfortable, Yoko Minamida also took off her clothes. After Obayashi saw Minamida nude, he included a nude scene for her in the film, which was not in the original script. So.
Who wouldn't?
I mean, go ahead. You know.
Yeah, he did ask her, and she was fine with it. But no. But actually, as far as Minamida, there is another very notable thing with her that I guess I maybe have seen evidence of this, but I never really thought about it. But you know how in this country, oftentimes people will play very different ages from what they actually are. And it's kind of notorious in anime that you oftentimes will have very young people, voiced by older people. But in live action in Japan, apparently there's very rigid, you're going to pretty much play your age. And Minamida took a major risk playing a much older woman because it basically meant that she would have a hell of a time getting another job as a young woman. So that was like yet another thing that they did that bucked trends, but it was like for her particularly, that was a pretty risky move. And I just found that kind of interesting that she was willing to not just that, but add a new scene on the spur of the moment. She definitely went on a limb for this film, so it's kind of interesting. But yeah, there were a couple other technical aspects I wanted to hit, and I'm trying to remember if we can y'all think of anything we haven't hit yet with that.
What about the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that Obayashi incorporated into the film?
That does incorporate.
Well, he was from the area.
Yes, he actually was a native of Hiroshima, and according to him, all his childhood friends were killed during the bombing. So that was a big impact on him. But they do have those war scenes, and I love the way they did the camera work for that, where they did the old school kind of film reel for the flashback. That was a fun little bit there. But yeah, that was that's a major plot point because again, the fiance went off to war and never came back. And yeah. Specifically say that it was from the bombings? I can't remember.
They were talking. The girls were talking about the bombings, and they were like, "Oh, it's like a marshmallow," and it's like, "What the fuck is this?"
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's like cotton candy.
One of the reasons why the aunt targeted them was the idea of they grew up in peace and didn't really know what war was, and she didn't like that they didn't understand this, basically. But that's probably, from what I understand and what I've read, that's as close to a serious message as they had, I guess. Mostly they were just having fun with this, but yeah. The another critic review that I found interesting described it as, what did they call it? The cheeriest, most infectious bloodbath in cinematic history.
I read that. That was interesting.
Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder if Castle had done this, like what it would have been like, because he definitely was a cheerfully macabre individual. Yeah, but
That's true
this
enough.
one, no. But, and as far as release, we should probably mention as well that this film, again, it was a huge hit in Japan, but it never got a single showing here until the aughts. It actually got its official American debut in 2009. And I think it was because Janus Films released it on DVD, and then
They were
it got,
originally supposed to put it with their Eclipse series because that's their line that they wanted to put cult films out for, and I think they just slated it for just a regular Criterion release. So
and it got that release, and it's a fun little release. Not a huge amount of special features, but some interesting ones.
Yeah, enough to give background anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely that. The one, it's called what's it called? Constructing a House. It was actually a pretty good set of interviews. That was very interesting.
You're making me kind of want to check this out.
Okay.
I almost bought it during the last Criterion sale.
Oh, there's a new one coming up soon. Actually, I'm going to be looking at the one you just mentioned. I think they're putting out a Godzilla multi-film set, and I think it'll probably include that one. So I may have to get that.
Yeah, it's like the whole like Showa era Godzilla series. I think it's like 11 movies. From the first Godzilla all the way through Terror of Mechagodzilla, and each one like has its own like art, and it comes with like a legit book.
Yeah,
it's like $170 though, but man, if that ends up being on sale, like that's gonna be everybody's like top buy on every Criterion sale.
It'll be a big one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a lot of them. That'll sell out right away.
Which is why I may actually put money aside to actually get that.
Probably a good idea.
So I guess, do we want to go ahead and go into favorites? So we covered everything else pretty much.
Well, I have two favorite scenes.
Okay.
One scene is where I don't know why, but when you see this eye, like in the middle of the ants, and and however they did it, it made it look like she had a third eye in her mouth.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
They're eating the watermelon, and Fantasy sees Mac's eye in the ant's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And like she blinks, and it's like oh no, you didn't see anything. And then she blinks again, and it's like nope, the eye is there, and nobody else catches it.
She was teasing her hard for that time period.
Yeah.
Just because, you know what's going on, but nobody else knows.
And we should probably mention that the aunt, when you first see her, she's got very pale hair and she's in a wheelchair and she seems fairly infirm. And after Mac disappears, I think after they have the watermelon, she starts walking around and they're all
No.
like, she's
Right
like,
after
oh, I
Mac,
have. Yeah,
right after Mac is gone, she's able to get out of her wheelchair.
that's true. Yeah. And then
My
She's like,
other
a little darker. Yeah. What's
my
up?
other my other scene was I'm sorry, I love that scene with the head and the well. I just love it. It's now that I'm going back and thinking about it, I just love how it just appears to scare. Who is that? That's not gorgeous, but
I think that was
fantasy.
fantasy.
Because everyone keeps dismissing all her sightings because she's fantasy, you know? So that's, yeah. Something jumped up and bit me in the ass.
Sure it did.
All right. Well, Dustin, your favorite?
It's kind of hard for me to pick a favorite because there was a lot of like really cool standout stuff. Like usually I don't usually I don't like a lot of foreign films. But I enjoyed this one, like, which was surprising. I think the revelation about the cat and we see it become like demon cat in that picture, like I think that was maybe my favorite things. It's like, whoa, this is really cool. What the hell's going on?
Right.
So I'm gonna go with that.
And Brandon?
Well, my favorite is the piano scene. I don't know what it is about that where all the body parts are kind of flying everywhere. The fingers are playing the piano. It's just one of those scenes that, to me, whenever I think of this film, I think of that scene. I don't know what it is. It's just that's the wackiness that this represents.
Yeah, Melody gets eaten by the piano is also pretty difficult to forget.
Right. I guess for me, I kind of like Dustin said, there's like a lot of cool stuff. It's hard to parse through it all. I do like the part where the disembodied head biting the girl in the ass, just because the absurdity of it just amused me. The coolest scene, like I said, I think was the gorgeous being broken apart by the mirror. I thought that was really cool. And then there's just one part that just sticks with me, and that was the part where they were just playing the theme, just really playing a very nice melodic version of the theme. And you see the aunt dancing around with the skeleton and dancing around on her own, and you see the cat jump on the piano and play it for a bit. And it was just such a weird little scene, and like I said, I love the music there. So it was
And the cat singing along.
Well, yeah.
And I just wanted to say that Tim actually said that he really likes he concurs with you, Brandon, that the piano scenes were especially with the deaths and the bodies flying, one of his favorite scenes.
Yeah. Seems that he had some technical issues, unfortunately, but yeah. Well, all right. Anyone have any final thoughts, or?
This movie is nuts. Like, go see it.
I'm actually gonna rewatch it again eventually. I mean, I would like to sit down when I'm not so tired, because today I got up at like 5:30 in the morning and had some tests and stuff. So I would like to rewatch this in its entire lunacy again.
Yeah. I have to admit, I kind of fell asleep trying to watch the short film. I made it through this one no problem, but the short film put me to sleep. So I'll have to watch it one day when I'm awake. But
Yeah, it's like we just keep pumping ourselves full of stimulants, but it's not good enough anymore.
Yeah.
I was trying to go along with the trip.
I got a good nap last night watching Night of the Lepus.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was
I
a
mean,
sleepy. That was a sleeper.
it's a cool movie. It's just kind of eh.
Yeah.
Also an odd movie.
Well,
You have to be
Yeah.
in the mood for it. Like if you're in the mood for if you're in the right mood, it is like amazeballs. Like it's the best thing ever. But if you're not feeling it, it's like, what is this? Why am I
I was
here?
just tired, you know. But then I came home and watched House and had no problem staying awake.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, maybe
I don't know.
Death Cab will keep us
I
awake.
like my batshit crazy horror films. I also saw The Dead Don't Die Sunday, and that was pretty crazy. I liked it.
I liked it.
Yeah. Anyway, so if we're done with that, I guess we'll start with our final, and then I guess I'll lead off. Kotobuki Jake. I frequently guest on the YouTube channel Septon Sin versus the World, and we actually have a recent video where we talked about the weird ass stuff in our collection, and Brandon put this movie on there. Can't believe I didn't think of it myself, but whatever. And of course, I am planning to add more videos to my own channel, Kotobuki Jake. I have a couple. I just have not had time to do it. Mostly because I'm watching so many movies and doing other stuff all the time. Anyway, so Brandon, I'll pass it to you.
Oh, well, Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We are a channel dedicated to physical media and the love of physical media. We are continuing to work our way through as we start October and our upcoming Horrorween, as we call it, where we will be going over various films. This week's film is going to be, as we discussed, Night of the Lepus, and we look forward to a very exciting month. Of course, I also do some work for Inside Movies Galore, and next week's film is going to be, what was it? Dawn of the Dead, the original.
And I'm actually going to say this once I find my copy. I figured we're going to do the Dario Argento version of Dawn of the Dead, the original. So, unless anyone has any complaints about that, because it is longer.
We're going to do the Romero Dawn of the Dead, right?
Well, there was a specific date posted on it. I do know that.
It is the Romero Dawn of the Dead, but Dario
Okay, good.
Argento had a specific release of the Romero film that he had that was longer on the
Ooh.
Anchor Bay 3-disc ultimate set.
I actually have that. I haven't
So,
seen it yet.
well, so check that
I'm gonna go
out.
dig that out right now.
That is the version that I want us to watch.
Sweet.
That way we can cover it in its entirety. Dario Argento was one of the guys who loved Night of the Living Dead, Romero's work, and he when he released it over in Italy, I believe, in Europe, he had a longer cut of it, whereas the U.S. had some censorship issues with it at the time, and I think Britain had some censorship at the time, but Italy did not have that censorship at the time, so it's a unique cut. In any case, My name is David Stregi, and you will get back to me in a moment. Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, I'm Dustin. I'm a horror collector living here in Milwaukee while I go to school. Um, and I have my own horror collecting YouTube channel at The Crypt of Horrors, and we're working on doing reviews soon. We have our first one, I think, coming at some point soon, officially. We were kindly given a screener for something called Bad CGI Sharks, which I am going to review as soon as I can sit down and watch it.
Really?
And yeah, it's. I think I have to be in the right mood. Like it feels like one of those movies. It's like I'm gonna try to approach it kind of like Ghost Shark, which is honestly a pretty stupid movie if you're like in a serious mood. But if you're like, let's have a party, it's the best thing you've ever put in front of your face. So,
Such a fun film.
yeah. Oh, it's
Unfortunately, it got sold out by the time I got around to actually having money for it. So
there
I'm
is there is a 6-film shark collection on Amazon right now on DVD. It's like a brand new thing. It does come with Ghost Shark on there, plus something called Alligator Alley. Like I'm probably gonna buy that myself pretty soon. Actually, fun thing. I like this other podcast called God Awful Movies, where they make fun of like religious movies, and they do Patreon bonus episodes of normal movies, and they have an episode on Ghost Shark that is just, it's wonderful. It's like the only thing that made this movie entertaining was that the shark can come out of any body of water. So it's coming out of hoses, it's coming out in the rain, like it eats this kid on a slip and slide. Like it is just perfect.
and my name is David Stregi, like I said, and I run Inside Movies Galore, but I kind of feel like we run it all together. So I'm very proud and very honored to be part of this ragtag group of people and what it's turned out to be. And I also do reviews on my own channel from time to time. I haven't due to my health as of lately, but I will be getting back into doing hardcore reviews. Lately, I've been doing video collection videos, which has been fun because I'm organizing my room as I'm going through it. But one thing I can say is that I've been working with um, Brad Sykes, the original director of Camp Blood, on his latest and last installment to his High Death trilogy. And the teaser for it came out, so definitely check that out. And it's set to be coming out in early 2020. And I'm really excited to be part of the production behind it. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And I may be working with David Sterling later on. So definitely check out some of the other stuff. I know that Camp Blood 8 is set to still come out. Just recently, Bride of the Werewolf came out, which I helped produce. It is available on Blu-ray and DVD, so check that out. And you should be able to contact David Sterling directly for a copy if you want one. But Dustin, I'm going to borrow you one of my personal copies tomorrow. So
Okay, cool.
so that you can check it out, and then I'll take back my neighbor toner.
Yeah, and I think I also had your name from you too, right?
Yeah, but that can eventually go to Katie. And I was wondering whether you wanted to give it to her or whether I wanted to give it to her. It's up
Um,
to us.
I think you run into her more often.
Okay, then I'll take it back.
So
Alrighty
yeah.
then.
Oh,
So
I totally forgot. I have an Instagram for my collection at the Crypt of Horrors, and I'm also on Twitter as the Crypt of Horrors, where I'm back after my censorship for truth. So yeah, follow me. And We'll do stuff.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, next week, like we said, Dawn of the Dead, where we are picking up on our Romero trail for this Halloween season. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Appreciate your time listening here, and say good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right.